Welcome to the World Nomads podcast, delivered by World Nomads, the travel lifestyle and insurance brand. It's not your usual travel podcast. It's everything for the adventurous, independent traveler.
Thank you for tuning in. My name is Kim and alongside me is Phil. And in this episode, we're travelling to Morocco.
Very exotic indeed. North African country bordering the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. Do you know it's the fifth largest Arab country by population? There's over 33.5 million people in the country. Of course, it's known for predictably sand dunes, but also beaches and markets and mountains.
And it also, Phil, forms the backdrop to many foreign films that have been entirely or at least partially shot in Morocco, which brings us to your quiz question.
Name 3 Hollywood movies that have been filmed in Morocco. And if you say Casablanca, you're wrong. That was filmed in Burbank, California.
It was entirely on
Inside the
site.
studio.
Yeah,
All
on
right.
site.
Pick 3 others.
We'll have the answer at the end of the episode, but we don't have any Hollywood stars in this episode, Phil. Our guests are stars in their own right, including yourself. Ollie runs a business called rad-season. It's an all-in-one website for finding and booking accommodation to the best action, sports, adventure and music festivals in the world. He's going to chat surfing in Morocco. We'll find out about capturing the best pics with Ralph, and Claudia will share her story of her time with a family. And it was around Thanksgiving, which is a really important time to Americans, isn't it?
Yep.
Plus, meet the girls who are travelling to every country in the world. But our first guest is Marik Braun. He was a gaming designer. I know, right?
Right.
He quit his job to travel. Now, he runs the travel blog called Indie Traveller, and it's sharing budget travel guides alongside tips on packing and gear. And Morocco is one of the destinations that feature on the site. And Marik has broken down a visit there into 3 key areas.
I think what I did, it was probably, so I spent a month in Morocco, and it struck me that there are some sort of itineraries or routes that people usually might want to consider. I think the sort of the standard trip seems to be Marrakesh, the city of Marrakesh, and the Sahara. Those usually go together in a 1-week experience where in the old city for a while, exploring the markets, maybe staying in a riad, one of those traditional sort of almost palatial little hotels with a courtyard. You go to the Sahara. That's like 1 week sort of a classic Morocco experience, I would say. And there are 2 other sort of clusters of popular destinations. One in the north, closer to Spain. You can even get there from Spain with a ferry. And one further to the south, which you can reach quite easily if you fly to Agadir, for instance, which is kind of a seaside resort place. Not usually my kind of thing. I like to explore and discover in the country, but actually Agadir, it's really well connected. So from there, you can do a trip around the south very easily.
There's not many places where you can put sand dunes, beaches, mountains and desert into the kind of top 5 things that it has going for it. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, it is. I think Morocco is great, actually. It is a very unique destination, and it is so close to Europe as well. I mean, I'm from Europe, so it's easy for me to get there. But other listeners who might be from Australia or the United States, it's a really great add-on to, if you're visiting Europe anyway. Because it's just so different. You go there and just culturally it's completely different, and just visually as well. All these desert towns and these markets and everything is a whole different little world. I like to have these sort of immersive experiences when I travel, and that's really definitely possible in Morocco, whether in the Sahara where it's just sand stretching out as far as you can see, or you're going through a little town's marketplace, and there's just so many smells and spices and different things going on there, so much activity. So that's just I think one of the most appealing things about Morocco. It just feels like a very unique and different place.
One of the things we try to uncover at World Nomads and on the podcast is those places that are off the beaten track. And when you Google indietraveller.co, and we will have the links in our show notes, you go to Morocco and there's a link there to the 7 best places for wild swimming. So what are some of those secret spots?
That's an interesting question, because I think the resource I linked was was on another site, and I did use that to find one swimming hole near, I believe it was near Tafraout, a small town in the south, and just went up there, and you get to a place where there's really no sign or anything. You have to know where it is, or ask people around, and you get to a sort of an oasis-like place in amid the rocks, where we can take a little dive. It was quite deep, actually. You could jump right in. That was not on any tour itinerary that I expect I know of.
Okay, so how much does it cost to travel to Morocco? Because as you say, you can get budget airline flights to Morocco. But once you're there on the ground, how do you do it without breaking the pocket?
I would say don't take tours. There are very many tours on offer when you get to Morocco that take you to the desert and so on and so on. But these do cost a little bit more. Another great tip is to not let yourself be seduced too much by all the salespeople that are everywhere. They will try to sell you an expensive rug, and if you don't have the budget for that, you should resist, of course. But in general, if you stay in budget accommodation and you eat in non-touristy places, and this can be a huge difference between having some food on the main square or walking a block or two away from there and going to a local place. It doesn't have to be too expensive. I think it's a country that you can do on a backpacker budget of maybe $30 or $40 a day. It doesn't have to be too expensive if you try to travel independently and take local buses and take and eat local food.
Still to come, surfing in Morocco, but right now let's hear Claudia's story of her time with a local family in Morocco.
I had already bought my tickets to Morocco. I was going. I didn't know anybody. And then I happened to connect with a family member someone who worked for him was Moroccan. And I met him, and he was like, oh, well, you should call my sister when you get there. So I was like, okay, cool. So I did that, and without having set up a length of stay or like really any formalities at all, she was just like, yeah, call me when you get to the bus station. You can come stay with us. And I ended up staying for a whole month.
Wow.
And that was the month of November. And I was personally going through a lot at that time, which I don't know if we necessarily want to get into, but like the whole trip was kind of like an eat, pray, love thing for me. I had just gone through this whole big breakup. I had left my job. I had left Los Angeles. I had left everything. I was assaulted the first week of my trip when I was in France, and then came to Morocco, which was funny because it was like the place that I was in the most danger was actually the place that I was the most comfortable. So anyway, it was like a lot that I was going through when I arrived at their doorstep. But they were so welcoming and like, who is this girl that doesn't speak any Arabic, and like she doesn't know how to milk a cow and all this kind of stuff. But they were like so willing to teach me. And they, I just like, we very quickly started making jokes about how like I wasn't going to go back to America and I was just going to stay in Morocco and, all that kind of stuff, and how I was going to bring my mother over and all that. And again, early on, it was like the first week or two that the American elections happened. And the people that I was staying with, they were four sisters and one of the sisters' sons. And the youngest of the four sisters was actually really cool. She spoke English and French as well as Arabic and Berber. But she was like one of only four women who was elected a council member of like their local community council. And so she was very much a representative for women's rights in the community. Yeah. So she was politically savvy and aware and had been paying attention to the American elections, as everybody was, because it was just all over the news everywhere. So we had all sort of been joking around about like Hillary, like we're so excited. And then that obviously wasn't how it turned out. So my sense of like, like disembodiment and just sort of not really knowing where I was or what was going on, and having this really bizarre set. Like, I was in this very different place with people that I didn't know, but was becoming more comfortable with. And all these crazy things were happening in my life and in the world. And like, blah, blah, blah. And it was coming on to the holidays, which are about, you know, home and family and things that are supposed to be comfortable and familiar and all that kind of stuff. And that's something that I latch onto a lot, no matter what. And I think because I knew that Thanksgiving was sort of at the end of my time with them, I was planning to leave because I had to get back for my flight. So I knew that was when I had to leave. And I just wanted to like offer something because they had been cooking with me for a month. And so I was like, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can cook this for them. So that was sort of the idea, was that it was like, I wanted to make this dinner for them, as like a parting gesture, as sort of a giving of thanks, actually, for the hospitality that they had shown me. So that was sort of where it came from.
Well, and you talk in your story about actually crying after that election result, and then realising that the soon-to-follow travel ban would affect, you know, people like your host.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. I was. Well, first off, all of this was going down in the wee hours of the morning in Morocco. It was very, very late at night in the U.S. That the counts were coming in and this was happening. And I remember setting an alarm and getting up at like 5 a.m. and checking the news and like seeing what was going on and being like that was the first thing that I saw when I woke up that morning, was like, oh my God, like this did not happen the way I wanted it to. And for a couple of hours, I was just glued to my computer screen, in my room alone. And like, once it was finally settled, I was weeping in my bed alone for a little while. And then I finally was like, I have to collect myself and go downstairs because they're going to be confused and they're not going to know where I am. Yeah. So I have to go down for breakfast. And then as soon as I would try to start to talk about it, I would start to cry again. And I remember I just kept saying to them, I was like, she lost. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That was what I kept saying over and over again. It's like, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting emotional about it now. And yeah, so it was like that sort of started the month. And then I kind of just had to leave it. I had to leave all of it and focus on being where I was. Which was really difficult. And I stopped journaling for a little bit. I stopped checking my emails. I stopped doing whatever and just really focused on, getting the most out of being where I was, going out and picking carrots, going and milking the cow. I became really good friends with the sons, both of the sisters' sons. They spoke English, and one of them really taught me quite a decent amount of Arabic at the time. So that was the relationship that I had. And again, I was extremely emotional when I left. The night before I left them, after we had our Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, there was some sort of miscommunication. One of them was Khadija, actually, who I wrote about, was going to henna my hands, and we hadn't. There was some sort of miscommunication about when it was going to happen. And so she didn't know I was leaving the next day and it was late at night. And so we weren't going to do it. And somehow the stress of whether or not I would get the henna on my hands, I just started crying. It was one of those things where it was it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal. That was where I was when I left. And we were all super sad. One thing that I loved about everyone that I met in Morocco is that they were so, immediately passionate, or so open with their love for each other, for strangers, whatever. They were immediately very effusive with oh, you're one of the family. You're one of us now. We love you. So quick to that. And that was really affecting because I felt that way about them too. So of course, to get back and so soon after that, have such a smack in the face as this blatantly ethnic travel ban happening in my home country, which I also care deeply about. It was just like adding insult to injury in a way that was motivating at the time. I was very involved in local politics for a little while when I got back. I drove from Nashville to DC by myself in one go to the Women's March. And I drew up a poster with all of the words of hatred that I had learned pulled from Donald Trump's speeches on one side, and then all of the words of love and friendship and community that I had been taught in Arabic by these women and men in Morocco, and like marched all day with it.
I could listen to you all day.
Thanks. I could talk about it all day.
Yeah, I bet you could. I
try not to talk about it so much because I'm like, I don't want to be that girl that's like, oh yes, that time that I was in Morocco. Like, when I was in Morocco, like I would talk about it all day, every day.
So big thumbs up from Morocco from you, Claudia.
Yeah, big thumbs up. Big thumbs up.
And look, listen, now you know, time's passed. Have you stopped crying? Have you been through your Eat, Pray, Love?
I mean, I've stopped crying about that, but who ever really stops crying?
Phil, Claudia was one of our 2018 Writing Scholarship winners.
Yep, there's always some quality stuff comes out of that. It's great. Yeah,
she spent time in Argentina. She's got a few stories coming out from her time there, but she has also put that story into print, so we'll share that in show notes as well. Now, Peter Murphy's an Aussie guy. He's just visited Morocco, and he pulled his phone out to capture some of the locals for the World Nomads podcast.
Welcome to the Medina of Fez, and I have with me Khalid, who has been here for all his life. He's a descendant of the original Berber inhabitants of the land. And hello, Khalid. Why is Morocco different to all the other Islamic states? You don't see a lot of the burqas, and you seem to have a freer life.
Yes, because that's mainly imported or introduced by different ideologies, went through TV channels or other people who went through Middle East. We are proud to be a native people of Morocco, but also North Africa. We have our own Islamic version practiced in Morocco, very soft and very modern, believing on everyone's freedom and respect. Exactly.
So it's not as strict as an Islamic rule.
No,
people
definitely.
Don't actually pray 5 times.
So people confuse us with the Middle East, and a good example is Arabia Saudi, which is more a tribal Islam. So it's an Islam, as we know it, the religion which is a religion of coexistence and living in peace, but they introduced the tribe ritual, which is very strict and conservative, and it is not the case in Morocco, where the native people have always lived in peace and harmony, and we did have different civilization on our land that we welcome them, sometimes with a fight or sometimes with hospitality. The diversity is our highlight. We are all different, but in the same time, one nation.
And here is Aziz, who grew up in the Medina of Fez. Aziz,
hello.
Why do people come to Morocco? What's the best thing?
Well, Morocco, of course, we have the sun, we have the beautiful weather, the landscape, and of course history. Lots of history in Morocco. Nice food, nice people, very friendly, and they see something exotic.
Hey, that's not what you told me before. You said people come to Morocco to see you.
Yeah, of course. Aziz, famous in all Morocco. I'm getting famous in the whole world, so they come to see me, to learn about from me, to learn, the jokes I tell them about Morocco, about everything.
You're a funny man.
Yes,
thanks, Aziz.
Thank you.
Bye now. And here we have Mohammed. Mohammed, why do people come to Morocco?
Please, they come to Morocco for buying carpet and drink mint tea. A lot of mint tea, because the mint tea, it's aphrodisiac. And my wife, she told me, stop, Mohammed, no more mint tea. I have 5 kids. No more kids, no more mint tea.
You've got beautiful carpets here. Beautiful carpets here, Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Murph. Rach, and anyone can do that. If you're overseas...
Yeah, we'd love to hear you.
Just take just on your iPhone, send it through on podcast@world-nomads.com.
Yep, very easy to do. We'd love to hear you.
Rach and Marty, they're 2 women, also known as the very-hungry-nomads. They're big on food, and they're taking this adventure to visit every country in the world very seriously, 195 of them. Let's check in and see what inspired them.
So, obviously travelling's in our blood. We've both been travelling for a long, long time, and we love it. However, a couple of years ago, we took off together and did a year and a half travel. So we did, travels through Iran and Central Asia, and Mexico for a couple of months. It was awesome. So it was a year and a half, and we got back and we went back to work and thought, okay, let's go back to the 9 to 5. Let's get jobs. We work in travel anyway, and returned for a couple of years. And when people would ask us about our travels through those countries, which were incredible and beautiful, pretty much the number one question they would say is, was it safe to travel? Is it safe to travel as females? Did you feel safe? Also, how many countries are there? So I think those were the two questions that we got asked so much. And then from that, they didn't really ask too much. I mean, they did ask about our trip, but it was more about, is it safe and how many countries are there? So we got to talking and thought, well, how many countries actually are there? Because it does go up and down a little bit, or, is up for discussion.
Yeah. And I guess the question was, has anyone seen them all? And when we sort of looked it up, there were not that many people, and it was really dominated by males. And we were just kind of like, well, wait a minute, how come there's no women? We do meet solo female travelers traveling out there. And I guess from that moment, somehow, I think I turned around to Rach and when we had the coffee and said, hey, you want to see them all? And
it was. We're literally in the cafe. Marty said, well, do you want to go and see them all? And I straight away, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So
the plan was born.
The plan was definitely hatched. So we started planning how we'd actually make it all work and the most logical way that we'd be able to do it. And mostly it's to inspire, yeah.
Look, you always use your common sense, and we always say, do your research so you know where you go in and where you shouldn't be or should be. But overall, we think that the world is a much safer place than we make it to be through media, and we generally actually greet with hospitality and friendliness in most of the countries.
You guys happen to be a same-sex couple, so two women. Are you married?
No.
Travelling the world, and really sadly, same-sex couples who choose to travel overseas are at risk of even criminal charges. In fact, it's hard to believe in 2018. So I'd love to get your insight into what it's like to travel as a same-sex couple, knowing, as I'm asking you this question, I don't think there should be an issue. So please spill the beans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Kim. It's definitely a different world when you are a same-sex couple. In fact, if you look at our blog or our social media, you won't find any reference to the fact that we are. I think for an Australians and people in certain countries, it's an obvious thing, although we don't promote it, and that's really due to the fact that there are in fact countries that still have capital punishment for homosexuality. I think there's 9 countries. So you do have to have your wits about it. Look, majority of places we actually are going are not really friendly when it comes to same-sex couple. In fact, just getting a double bed, which is just such a normal thing for any other couple, is a challenge. We tend to go between, can we have a double bed because the mattress is better, or we watch movies on a computer, so can we have a bed so we can easily watch them. We don't really show any affection that goes beyond, being best friends, and that's often what we say, we're best friends. I think that's common as in a lot of countries, they don't really show affection, so it's not a biggie. But look, it does feel wonderful when you go to a place and suddenly you can just do the extra, hold a hand, or maybe just, have a dinner, or not be questioned. When we do book a double bed through online reservations, almost always we get to the room and it's a twin room. So then we have to go downstairs and ask who we booked.
If we've booked a double or a queen, and then they sort of, you rock up and then they give you the twins, and I'm like, who's going to go down this time?
What do I call it? Hashtag twin beds by default.
Hashtag twin beds by default. I love that.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, Kim, is that what is so obvious to most of us, we see gay couples all the time, obviously, but in countries where homosexuality is not really legal, or they just believe that they have no gay people, they don't look for it. They don't see us as a couple. They just see us as the two friends, because I guess their expectations maybe are different.
From this perspective then, if you are two women that want to travel together, what's your advice?
To connect with other women, other travellers.
Good one. Instagram's a great one for that. We use a lot of Instagram, and it's almost social media, but Instagram's great because
we can connect with women who have traveled somewhere, and if they're solo female travelers, or if they're traveling together, then they can give us
really
tips and hints.
And it's instant. It's really good. Yeah. And they're women and people from all over the world, obviously.
Did you guys win like the $21 million Saturday lotto draw or something? How are you funding this?
Hey, we haven't got kids. There's one.
That helps, yeah.
Well, actually, originally we said, okay, let's just do this trip. Everyone tells us that we can't get a mortgage because we're spending too much money on the avocado smash. So we're like, okay, we'll just cut it down. We have lots of money, right? That's what the baby boomers said. That didn't work, but ultimately we put all our life savings into this trip. It means that we might not have a house or probably a tiny apartment
ever
at the cost of Melbourne dwellings.
Yeah.
So we're putting all our savings in. We are traveling on a strict budget of $50 a day
per person,
which can be challenging at times.
But I think at the end of the day, like, we've both worked really, really hard, the same as anyone else, to get enough money. And bottom line is we're pretty minimalist. We always have been. We're super happy with just a couple of black T-shirts and our shorts and this.
Yeah.
We travel with the carry-on backpack also, Kim, so we've got to keep it
10 kilos,
super light. It's the way forward, especially if you're doing this many countries.
We might do couch surfing a little bit again. We've done it in Iran a couple of years ago, and that was just
amazing.
The most amazing experience.
What was amazing about couch surfing?
Yeah.
Just that you got to live in the homes of locals?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess because Iran we know so little until you visit, and everything kind of happens behind the closed doors because you cannot go out. There's no bars, there's no drinking. So the young people young and old, tend to meet all in their homes, and they have little dinner parties,
elaborate lounge rooms.
Yeah, elaborate lounge rooms, and they put music on. So we started dancing because there's no places you can dance. Yeah, it was incredible because we got to know people and learn more about it. We played spin the bottle. We didn't even know what to ask. It's I don't want to insult anyone. I really don't know. We only read up to a certain point. You don't have that in the guidebook. What you should not ask and spin the bottle. Yeah. Then I remember Rach. It was Rach's turn. I was like, oh my God, I don't mind answering any questions, but I'm I don't know what to ask. And then I remember you asked the other girl, Fatima, oh, did you ever kiss a girl? And then they all giggle. They're like, yeah, we were practicing. And we were so phenomenal. And then one of the guys, I'm not kidding, it was 15 of us?
Yeah.
He asked his friend, if you had to be with the guy, which one would you choose here? And he says, so-and-so, whatever his name was. Yeah. And I said, oh my God, that is so open-minded.
That was awesome.
And they took us all of the places that they eat, and the food was phenomenal.
Rach, Marty, you are amazing nomads, incredibly inspiring. You're on an incredible adventure, and you guys are on a journey of a lifetime.
Oh, thanks.
And at the time of recording, Rach and Marty were in Cyprus. We'll have a link to the blog in show notes so you can follow their journey.
By the way, Morocco, it's a relatively safe place for women to travel. It's had its, bad reputation, but it's not too bad now. And while same-sex relationships are illegal for locals, if you're travelling as a same-sex couple or LGBTQ in Morocco, you can't be punished by law, but take it easy. Don't offend anybody too much. Don't be too over the top.
Yeah, be discreet.
Indeed.
Now, Photo Enrichment Adventures was founded by travel photographer, author and international guide Ralph-Velasco. He runs cultural tours focusing on photography. Is that right, Ralph?
Right. I teach travel photography, and I call them cultural tours with a focus on photography. So photography is a part of the trip. These aren't photo workshops, which by my definition is pretty much 12 hours a day, photography all the time. And so our trips are about half-day scheduled, half-day free time, and photography is a part of it.
Now, just before we started chatting, I did say that anyone that goes to Morocco and takes a photo seems to get it right. Is it visually stunning, or are we looking at, photos with a few tricks?
No, I mean, it's a gorgeous place. It's kind of hard to take a bad shot there, but obviously everyone does, even myself. But to me, it's in any destination, it's about being out at the right time of day, so getting that better light. And Morocco has wonderful light. I say my number one tip is just get out early. And Patrick Symes, who's a photographer, says, if you don't like getting out early, then be a writer.
I like that.
I love that one. So I use that often, and I think it's very true.
Yeah, and look, so many backdrops in Morocco too. You're really spoiled for choice.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful country for variety. And what I look for in a country or a destination when I'm putting together my trips is variety. And Morocco has that in spades. And so everything you said, beautiful old cities and whitewashed walls and the blue city of Chefchaouen and the capital of Rabat, Casablanca, which gets a little bit of a bad rap, kind of a place to just kind of fly in and out of. I think it's got one of the best medinas or old towns that I've seen in Morocco, the old center. And so I love the market there. And so I get my people out and we go out and we shoot those places. It's great.
So you've mentioned a few of your favourite spots. Any that you won't find in a guidebook that you've stumbled across and just thought, wow?
Well, I'm sure it's probably in a guidebook, but there's a small town called Skoura, Skoura, and we kind of use it as a midpoint between the desert of Erfoud, which is kind of the main city around Erfoud for the Sahara Desert. It's kind of that stepping point off to that really iconic sand dunes that you see, and camel rides, things like that. These great hotels right out in the desert. But Skoura is sort of on the way to Marrakesh, and so we use it as a stop-off point. And one of my favorite things that we do on the whole trip is we actually do a hike through an oasis. And when I was a kid, I don't know about you, but I used to watch those old cartoons, and to me an oasis was just a little clump of sand with one palm tree. And but in Morocco, and I'm sure other parts of the world, they can be 40 miles long and 5 miles wide. And so you just in this very stark, dry desert, you've got this very lush. Obviously, there's a river there. There's got to be water. And so there's these communities that have developed. And we walk through the oasis and see what's actually there, because as you're driving, and there's a lot of driving in Morocco, you see these oases, you're driving by them typically, but to actually get in them and see, how they really work is, to me, really fascinating.
What's the most photogenic country?
Ooh, that's a tough question. They're all photogenic in their own ways and for different reasons. Now, I say as a travel photographer, you have to be a jack of all genres, master of some, and a genre of photography. You've got architectural photographers, you've got landscape photographers, portrait photographers. But as a travel photographer, if you want to tell the story of the place, you have to come back with a variety of images. And so that's why I look for variety in the places that I go to. And Morocco is certainly high on that list, but also Romania is wonderful, Cambodia, Cuba, of course. And it doesn't matter what kind of camera you have or what your experience is. If the light is good, that's going to take your photography to another level.
Well, you've also captured images on your iPhone, haven't you?
Yeah, and I got some really nice stuff on my iPhone. And actually, one of my shots from Morocco was a finalist in the smartphone category for the Travel Photographer of the Year just 2-3 years ago. And it's a shot of I'm sitting on the camel, and I've got the camel in his head and the camel driver, and in the distance you see our hotel. It's just a nice shot. But what you can get with these smartphones is just incredible. And I'm doing a lot more video these days as well, and using the smartphone almost exclusively for that.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. So anyone that's listening, you don't have to, if you're going to Morocco, pack a digital SLR. You'll capture some good stuff on your iPhone.
Yeah, you sure can, and I don't even use a DSLR anymore. They're big, they're heavy, they're very obtrusive to the subject, and so I like to use what's called a mirrorless system, or the Micro Four Thirds, sort of between a DSLR and a smartphone. This fairly new category, but they're lightweight, they're small, they're not obtrusive to your subject, and I don't want to look like a professional photographer. I just want to look like regular Joe, and that's going to help me get a lot better photographs than if I've just got this huge camera. That can be intimidating to the subject.
We'll have a link to Mystical Morocco Tour for 2019 in show notes, but right now, I've given myself a theme song.
Here is the news.
Travel news. How cheesy is that?
That is very cheesy. Are you seriously going to keep that? We might vote on that.
I don't know. Yeah, okay, you can vote on it.
It gets the attention, though. You've set out, to grab our attention. I think you've achieved it, Phil.
Thank you very much. I've got another thing for you. You ready?
Yep.
The Inception horn.
What? What's that?
Oh, for when something dangerous is happening.
I like it. I can see this is going somewhere. This is going somewhere.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. All right. Slightly serious start to the news. As we speak, Hawaii is bracing itself for a battering from a hurricane, as is Western Japan, although it's a typhoon once you switch hemispheres. And earthquakes continue to ripple across Indonesia, Venezuela, and Trinidad and Tobago. Kerala in southern India is dealing with a flood crisis, as are parts of Laos and Thailand. So stay safe, everybody. And if you're thinking of travelling to any of these spots in the coming weeks, check with us here at world-nomads.com about your insurance coverage. Maybe even read the policy summary so you know what is and what is not covered in terms of cancellation, delay and rescheduling and what have you. But chat to us if you're going to head off to any of those places. All right, here we go. Here's something definitely not covered, let me tell you. Italian police are hunting a couple of tourists who stripped down to their underwear in this summer's heat and took a dip in the fountain at the monument to the unknown soldier.
No, not respectful,
they both
mate.
face fines of several $100s each if caught, and probably a kick up the bum as well from the local constabulary. Kim, I've got to tell you, Iceland, it seems, is so yesterday, with another Nordic country set to take the mantle as the hottest spot for travellers. It's riding on a wave of popularity as a foodie destination, and because of those quirky Nordic noir TV mystery shows. Do you watch any of that? Yeah. Where I'm talking about is Denmark. Denmark is booming.
And the books too. There are lots of great authors or books.
Girl with a dragon tattoo and all that.
Isn't
stuff.
that Sweden, that one?
Oh, possibly. Sorry. Oops.
No, I'm not going to say it's sort of the same.
The Danish Tourism Authority says they expect to top 10 million visitors by 2021. Hotel occupancy already runs at 80%, so expect to see a lot of building work over the next 5 years. Copenhagen is going to be chockers.
Gee, that's exciting.
Vogue has named a list of underrated countries you should visit now before everyone else does. The irony of the headline seems to be lost on them, but anyway, on the list, Zagreb in Croatia as a capital, Palawan Island in the Philippines, Marrakesh in Morocco, of course, Da Nang in Vietnam, that we've spoken about in an earlier episode, and Tasmania.
Yes!
No, I'm only kidding. It's not on the list.
Oh, why would you do that to me?
Why would you do that to a good Launceston girl?
Tasmania being my home state. And it is, but seriously, it is one that's on the lips of most travellers, even from... Like, don't look at me like that. Don't look at me. I'm going to take you there. I'm going to take you on tour to Tassie.
Absolutely.
Let's move on.
All right, let's move on.
We have a guest in the World Nomad studio here in Sydney that you met at a travel expo.
Yeah. Ollie, welcome to the studio, mate. It was great to meet up with you down at the Travel Massive meetup in Sydney. Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. It's good to meet you there.
Well, we were pretty excited about your business, rad-season. So can you just take us through what it is?
Yeah, sure. So rad-season is a one-stop shop for action sports and adventure events and festivals, where we showcase festivals worldwide. So it's everything from surfing events in Australia, the US, to snowboarding music festivals in Europe. And yeah, we've got a whole variety of festivals which we cover.
Anything that's rad.
Anything that's rad.
And did you get into that because you were a bit of an adventure traveller yourself? Is that how you got into it?
Yeah, so I guess my main, probably for the past 15 years, is my main sort of goal with travelling was to do something predominantly around surfing and action sports related, so surfing, snowboarding, mountain biking. The site's now been up for 2 years.
Well, there's plenty on it, and obviously this podcast is about Morocco, so I had a bit of a search on what is happening in Morocco outside of the markets and outside of the Sahara Desert. There are actually music festivals, and there's a big surfing culture.
Surfing. No, my jaw dropped right there. Surfing in Morocco.
You just don't put the two together, do you?
It's amazing. I'm originally from London, and we would always sort of friends and I, or I go off on solo trips, and we'd plan surfing locations that would not just in Europe, but that would be close to London and Morocco. The capital of surfing, Tagazout and Agadir, is about 4-hour flight from London, and they're doing daily flights there, and it's a completely different world. And sort of the first time I went there was probably about 10 years ago, and then since then sort of been back numerous times, and predominantly just to go surfing because it's such an incredible place.
Is it Mediterranean Sea?
So it's on the Atlantic.
Okay.
On the Atlantic Ocean. It sort of cuts in on the north in right near Gibraltar in the north of Morocco, sort of breaks into the Mediterranean. But the main sort of surfing is sort of based around the central central part of Morocco near Agadir, and then south. So from the Western Sahara all the way up, there's amazing waves. And it's just,
and nobody on them.
Some of the areas are getting a bit more popular. But if you take a drive, you can definitely find sort of empty amazing waves yourself.
So for those people that understand surfing terms, what kind of breaks are they?
So breaks, I mean, I'd say it was the Disneyland of right-hand point breaks in anywhere in the world that I've been. I mean, I've surfed probably about 35, 40 countries, and Morocco is something special for surfing.
Give us a few more countries then. As Phil said, his jaw dropped when we put Morocco and surfing in the one sentence.
Yeah.
When we did the podcast on Peru, that's got a massive surfing culture.
It does, yeah.
Give me 3 other countries that you don't expect there to be a surfing culture.
So Israel is one. I couldn't believe it when I was out there, and there was probably about 100 people in the water, and it was like being on Manly Beach.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Okay, that's one.
Where else? I'd say the UK and Scotland has got a pretty big scene. It's cold.
You'd have to have a fairly thick wetsuit, I would think.
All around the UK, sort of Cornwall and Devon in the south, and then Scotland's amazing. Norway has got some incredible waves, and then now I guess there's all these locations which are sort of cold water surfing destinations that people are sort of looking to do once they've done all the ones around the equator and all the tropical kind of locations.
So when you're back to Morocco, when you're there, what's it like in terms of safety?
I mean, there's like 1 or 2 that are patrolled, but the majority of the surfing spots, you're left to your own devices. So that, there isn't much of water safety. But it's sort of there's plenty of spots for beginners, intermediate surfers, advanced. So there's a variety of breaks. There's beach breaks, and there's sort of there's a big infrastructure around the surfing there now, so people can go on surf camps, and there's people sort of all over the world, all over Europe, coming to Morocco to do a week's surfing experience, and some of them sort of incorporated with yoga, and you stay in these amazing camps and places, and normally sort of go out every day doing surfing classes with local guides and local instructors.
Apart from the Disneyland of right-hand point breaks, what is it that you like about Morocco?
I guess the main thing that it was so different. So sort of surfing in Europe and surfing different countries in Europe, they've all got their, like, whether you're in France or Portugal or Spain, it's still sort of you still obviously you are in Europe, but you feel that way. Whereas for this maybe like a half an hour longer flight to get to Africa and get to Morocco, you feel like you're in a completely different world. So I think like the first time I ever got there, traveling from London in December, getting off the tube, it's freezing, get to the airport, arrive in Agadir, and then jump in a minivan 20 minutes away, suit up, get in the wetsuit, and it's 25 degrees. People, all the locals are sort of standing on the cliffside wearing jalabas, which is these robes. It sort of looks like something out of Star Wars. There's camels. It's just a completely, like, all these senses, all these smells that you're getting from the market, and everything from sort of saffron to all these different spices, and that's something that you don't really get anywhere else.
Yeah, see you later, Kim. She's gone.
I'll say goodbye, though, before I head off to Morocco. Thanks so much for coming in. We'll share Rad-season in show notes, and if you've got a pic of you surfing in Morocco, that'd be great too.
Yeah, love to see
no worries.
too.
Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
That brings us to the end of our episode on Morocco. Fairly action-packed, that episode, so time to find out the answer to your quiz question.
Name 3 Hollywood blockbusters that were wholly or partly filmed in Morocco. Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. The Jewel of the Nile.
Yes.
We've also got The Mummy.
Yes.
Alexander, the one with Angelina Jolie in early 2000s. Sex in the City 2, although are we calling that a movie? I don't know.
Yeah.
And this one? Inception.
And also the James Bond movie Spectre.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
American Sniper and Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Find us on iTunes or the Google Podcast app. Get in touch by emailing podcast@world-nomads.com. Our next destination episode, Phil, where are we heading? Uruguay.
Oh, that's right.
We'll see you there. It might just be me.
The World Nomads Podcast. Explore your boundaries.